Hi guys, welcome back to the Desk Corner. Welcome to a new video. It feels really weird filming this, I'm not going to lie, because I haven't filmed an intro like this in quite a while actually. Today I'm going to share with you guys some tips for drawing animals in colored pencil because over the past maybe year and a half or 2 years I've drawn quite a few animals in colored pencil and I think I've learned a few things along the way. I'm just going to pause this video really quick to let you guys know I am doing a Q&A in an upcoming video, and if you have any questions you'd like me to answer, you can comment down below. I'm going to be drawing a donkey in today's video. I actually started it in another video I recently did where I show you how I pick colored pencils. So if you are interested in that, go ahead and click that. I'll link that down below. And I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and get straight into the video. So here's my donkey drawing, you guys. I'm using Caran Luminance and Faber Castell Polychromos. And again, if you want to see me picking colors for this drawing, check out my other video linked down below. I also work on the eyes in that video as well. So let's go ahead and start with some colored pencil animal tips, shall we? So I actually took a few notes here so that I wouldn't miss anything and so that I could be a bit more organized in this video. My first tip for you guys is to make sure you're using different techniques with your pencil for different areas, because different areas of the animal obviously are going to have different textures. So when it comes to something like the eyes, you want them to look pretty smooth and glossy, and you don't want them to have any, I guess, grain or weird texture like that because they are supposed to look a little bit more shiny. Now for the eye, to get that smooth texture, I burnished my pencil, which means pressing harder and getting rid of any grain of the paper. You can also use solvent to do this as well, and I just want the eyes to look really glossy and shiny. But when I'm working on something like the shorter fur on the donkey, I don't want to get that same shiny look, so instead of pressing hard or using too much pressure and getting like a glazed look or a smooth look, I want to preserve the texture of the paper a little bit more, and I'm just going to build up layers while not using too much pressure with my pencil. Since the fur is so short, I actually don't have to worry about like the direction that it's moving in or creating long fur strokes with my pencil the way I might have to do if I was working on a lion or something that had longer fur, like a dog with curly fur or something. But since I'm working on an animal that has very short fur, I don't need to worry about that particular texture for this drawing, and it makes it a little bit easier for me. When we do get to working on the ears, I'll show you a little bit of that long fur texture I was talking about. My second tip for you guys is to not be afraid to use a variety of colors. So upon first glance at this reference photo, I see a lot of dark brown, sepia, a bit of a dull gray color, and some lighter brown. But when I look closer, I can see some undertones. So I decided to pull out my green, my olive green pencil, some of my blue pencils, some of my burgundy and red, brown, and yellow brown pencils as well. And I'm using all of those together to really build up some layers of color and build up some nice undertones for this donkey. The main reason I included this tip is because I know some of you might be new to color medium and maybe colored pencil is your first ever color medium. That's how it is for me because I started out with graphite and charcoal, and I didn't come from a background of painting or anything like that. So I really knew how to create value, and I was good at shading and blending and all of that, but I didn't know how to mix colors, and I didn't know much about the basics of color theory or anything like that at all. I was very lost, especially with a big set of Prismacolors, so I would pretty much just pick out the main color I thought I saw in the drawing, and I really wouldn't have a huge variety of different colors that I would use. I suggest that you be bold and use those brighter colors that you wouldn't think to use. You can use them lightly and then cover, or I guess layer on top with your browns or other more neutral colors. And when you do that, it kind of helps them to blend in, and you don't want the bright colors, of course, to be too vibrant or stand out too much in your drawing. You just want there to be a hint of them in something like this, where maybe the fur is brown, or if you're working on something like skin tone. So really don't be afraid to pull out those oranges and greens and blues and yellows and all of that, because those colors definitely are there in the undertones. And if you don't really know where to start with that or how to identify apply that, I would look into a little bit of color theory and also warm versus cool tones if you're very new to colored pencil. But that could be a whole new video in itself, and maybe I'll create a video like that if any of you are interested in that. My third tip for you guys, and yes, it's only the third tip, I just feel like I've been talking for a while already, but I guess we're only on the third tip. So my third tip is to make sure that you're still paying attention to highlights and shadows. So I find that when I'm working on animals, I tend to get distracted by all the patterns, all the fur, or whatever texture that the animal has, scales, fur, feathers, whatever, and I get distracted by colors, and there's just so much going on in an animal drawing that sometimes I forget about the very core, which is the value, the darker shadows, the lighter highlights, and everything in between. So what I'm going to do is, as I slowly build up layers, I'm figuring out which areas need to be darkened up more. I like to use my sepia from the Polychromos set as well as my black pencil to slowly darken up areas. A lot of people don't like to use black too much in their work, but I find that if you use it after layering some other colors underneath, then you get some underlayer and you get a little bit more depth than if you just use black on its own. But as an artist, I'm not opposed to using black in any way. I do know that some artists are a bit more opposed to that. I really think it helps to achieve that true dark shadow that you want to get. But just like shadows are important, highlights are important as well. So one way that I like to leave highlights is by first creating one underlayer over the entire fur area, and that will be the lightest color that there is that you can see in the reference photo. I didn't exactly do this on this paper because I'm using toned paper, and so that really helped for me to achieve that mid-tone as well, and for me to add highlights with my white pencil. But if you're using a white paper, it's a little bit different, and when I use a white paper and I'm coloring in an animal, I like to use whatever the lightest color is. Maybe it's cream or something very light underneath, and that color will show through in the lightest areas that you leave. But you need to remember that if you want to leave a large highlighted area, you can't really go in and add that later the same way you would with something like pastel or paint or anything. You definitely need to preserve that highlight to begin with. Another thing that frequently happens to me when I work on animal drawings is I become overwhelmed by certain areas, or maybe the picture altogether as a whole. So if I just look at a picture of an animal, I see all of the fur or scale or feather patterns, whatever it is, and I think about how long it would take me to work on that. And yes, it is a bit time consuming, and these things do take a long time, especially with a medium like colored pencil. So if you're not a patient person like me, or if you tend to get a little bit restless or bored, what I recommend doing is moving on from one area sometimes to another area and skipping around a little bit. Even though it makes more sense logically to work on one area at a time, you can do that for some parts. I like to do that for the eyes and the nose and the mouth and things like that. But when I start to work on other fur patterns and all of that, then I start to get overwhelmed and bored by certain areas. So if you're working on an area for a while and you find yourself lacking motivation, maybe move on to a different area and start adding in the base layers for that area, for example. And another kind of benefit to doing this is that you start to see the drawing come together more as a whole, rather than if you just worked on one specific area for a long time and didn't touch the other areas. Then you realize you have to start kind of from scratch again when you work on a new area and when you move on. So that's something that helps me. I do have a brain that tends to get distracted or just get tired and impatient, and sometimes I lack motivation. If you're feeling a bit impatient, don't be afraid to use mixed media, you guys. If you'd like to get the underlayers done and out of the way quickly, you can use mixed media, or maybe you can use a solvent on your colored pencils, and that helps to create that underlayer much more quickly. If you'd like to use watercolor or markers as an underlayer, I know a lot of people do that as well. So don't be afraid to use mixed media for convenience, because I think that it's a great way to kind of speed up the process sometimes and to make the artwork more enjoyable, especially if you're someone who doesn't like working very slowly, because colored pencil is very slow. But I think that's all for this video, you guys. I hope that it was helpful for you, and thanks so much for watching as always. I do want to remind you that if you'd like to leave a comment down below about the drawing, that would be great, or the video. But if you would like to also leave a question for my Q&A video down below, then that would be great. And I've already done a community post and asked on the Discord server as well, but I thought it would be fair to also include it in a video. And I think that's all, you guys. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will show you guys how this donkey turned out in the end, since I didn't finish it in the video. And yeah, thank you guys. I will see you in the next video. Bye!